Hello again, everyone.
Hi.
We're officially starting the webinar now. I just introduced myself. I'm going to say one more time. I'm Alexandra Dericles, co-founder and CEO of Vidcode. I'm really excited to talk to each of you today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leandra. I am joining Ali here. We just started recording. If everyone could go ahead and just stay muted over the course of the webinar. I'll be kind of managing things. We have like a 2-computer setup here. So if I'm ever like looking slightly away from the screen, it's because I'm kind of like being a webinar admin. But really excited for you to all be here. We've run one Vidcode 101 webinar before, so really excited to do this again, introduce everyone to the creative programming side of things. It should take about 20 to 30 minutes, and we're going to have questions at the end.
Great. Okay, so we'll kick it off. Just want to start for those people who have joined who don't know what Vidcode is. Vidcode is an online coding curriculum and course. We work with upper elementary, middle, and high schools. We like to say tweens and teens are kind of our expertise. We really built the user experience inspired by teenagers 5 or 6 years ago. And since then, as a business, it's been a lot of fun growing with schools and libraries. And in doing so, we now have over 300 online coding tutorials that have been tried and tested over the last 5 years in schools and libraries. Something we're also really passionate about is very lightweight support models for educators, for schools, for libraries. And so as we talk about the curriculum today, at Vidcode, we have free curriculum that you can just go ahead and use, always have access to. We also have more in-depth curriculum that's on our premium side, and then we also have support for that. And that's been a really important part. And I mentioned lightweight support, it's very low cost. We do come in and do in-person PDs as well. But we found that a lot of the programs that we work with, just want an hour or two of virtual coaching, maybe a couple hours throughout the year. So all that being said, Vidcode is loved by over 9,000 educators. I would say about 80% of those educators have never coded before. And so there really isn't a lot, there's never no prep work, but Vidcode's definitely built to be a platform that's very easy to self-onboard and jump into the curriculum, and then we'll talk about all the support in our community and all that good stuff as we talk through the demo today. One other thing to mention about our curriculum that we're really proud of is this past summer, summer 2019, Vidcode was compared to other curriculums across the world. And in the computer science space, this is pretty new. I know it's something we're all kind of excited about is let's start comparing these curriculums. And Vidcode was voted #1 in the world, above CodeMao, which is the most used platform in Chinese schools, above CodeMonkey, above CodeSpark, as the most in-depth and standards-aligned curriculum globally and in the US. And so we really, part of the reason that is for Vidcode is our curriculum is aligned by design. So when we founded the company, the K-12 CS pathway was starting to be created. We were in New York City. We were part of those early conversations, or at least got to listen in on them. And that really helped inform us creating a curriculum from scratch that's built on the CSTA standards, the K-12 CS pathway, as well as NGSS. The list goes on. We have them all on our site, but to this day, we've never not aligned to a curriculum. And we do a lot of state breakdowns for those schools and districts on the call, but rest assured that it's very in-depth. It's a great introduction for upper elementary students. It's a great intro to programming course for middle school programs. And it's also a really solid year-long high school course or college prep course. So lots of options there. And with that, I kind of want to segue into the product portion. The last thing I'll say before I pass it to Leandra for demoing is that Vidcode's really known in the space to be very unique in how students can upload photos, videos, all this cool stuff. So I'll have Leandra show that off. But there's just a little intro to our business and how we work with schools, teachers, and libraries today.
Cool. great to meet all of you. I'm just gonna like move the computer over a little bit. I can still have you in it. So I'm really excited to be demoing everything. As I go through everything, let me go ahead and just share this while I'm talking. Okay, awesome. So as I'm going through everything, feel free. There is a chat box that I have open on my computer in this like dual computer world. As I go through, feel free to ask questions. This can be a conversation. It doesn't have to just be watching. If there's anything that you want me to go into more deeply, we have time to do all of that.
I just really are a product leader. So fun to have her go through that. And yeah, she's the expert here. So straight from the source.
Cool. So before I dive into the actual like programming interface where your students are going to spend most of their time, I just want to show you some projects that have been made just so you can have an idea of what students are making on Vidcode. This is a projects gallery. It's curated. Your students' projects won't just like surprise end up on here. We take student privacy very seriously. So some of the things that students make are projects like games. This is like a brick breaker example that I didn't lose.
Physics here, we've got physics, interaction design, core computer science principles, again, all following that pathway. So Leandra's showing us projects from, advanced to intermediate and beginner as well.
Yeah, more on the like beginner side. This would be a project. It actually uses my webcam, which is quite fun. And it's a project that a student would make really on like the first level of Vidcode. So you can see, unlike the project I just had up, there isn't really interaction going on here, but I'm able to use my own face. I'm able to like add opacity to objects. I'm able to set variables and change their properties. So introductory, but already very fun. Let's see, on the more beginner side as well, we have projects like this. So this is the very first project in the arrays unit. So you can see like fairly simple, just creating this array, looping through it, but you're able to make creative projects like this one, the life cycle of a frog.
Well, just while you're on this one, like this is such a core project, stop motion. We actually showed this project to Megan Smith of the government, and she called it the PowerPoint of coding. So we're actually using a lot of middle school programs for keyboarding and Microsoft Office, and how can you integrate it with those types of things. This is a perfect example. Everyone today, when you leave today, you're going to get access to Vidcode. You have access to this tutorial. You can go into your classroom tomorrow and make a Microsoft PowerPoint with code. Or forget the brand name, but you know what I mean. So yeah, it's a really good example.
This is more of like a level 3 project. I showed this like a group of 3rd graders last week, and it was very contentious. But the girls would all like cheer. It was adorable. So this is like a level 4 project. In level 3, we start to introduce loops, and you're able to do things like create animations, like the animations going in the beginning. You're able to do things like create this like color background that's looping around. So that's like level 3. Level 4, you introduce conditionals, so the effects are actually stopping at a certain point. So that's an idea of what students make in the like initial course pathway. I'll show one more here before going into the coding interface because I really like this one. This is a simulation that a class made. And I love the idea of integrating computer programming with things like simulations. I really like the project that we showed you with the life cycle of a frog, but that's more displaying what students know. Once you get more into simulations, you can actually bring student research into a project and have them think more deeply about their research while modeling it.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to this project is just, it's always hard to kind of sum up what Vidcode teaches, but we very much, we teach computer science, computer programming through kind of in this case, it's very interactive front-end programming way. So not only are, like Leandra mentioned.
No, but that's the one that's loaded with Flutter.
Oh,
It's okay.
Um,
Admin computer.
They're using their own data, but they also, people ask us all the time, how does this relate to, once you get out of Vidcode, how does it relate to the world? So I just want to kind of assure here that this is front-end programming, and it's the most exciting parts of it when you're making buttons and making things move and all that stuff, and it's just core for any web programmer to know that today.
Yeah, we have a whole unit where students start to build on top of the Vidcode library and start making their own components, things like sliders, things like buttons. It's a really powerful part of the course.
So that's kind of where the college prep, high school prep, as you get into our extended coursework, students are learning quite a lot to the point that they could apply for a job and put web programming, put JavaScript on it. So that's really important to us.
So I'm going to dive into the actual student side of things here. I'll show you all the course. So I just get there by going into my classes. Since I'm a teacher here, I have the option to start coding or add students, go to my dashboard. Your students are going to have a slightly different view. Their call to action button is going to be start coding, but that's really the only difference. Once you go into start coding, your view is the same as your students. So this is the course. As students go through things, they're going to earn these check marks. You'll be able to see their progress on your side. You'll be able to see the projects that they're making. There are a few different ways that people are using this course pathway. There are schools and districts that are using it out of the box. So they're taking levels 1 all the way through 12. It builds up to a full year course, and they're using that as their Computer Science 1 course. There are also educators that are just using a few of the courses, of the units, as part of like a technology course or as part of a digital literacy course. And then we also have, sorry,
I should do that. Let me do that while you're.
Oh, that's okay. And then we also have libraries using Vidcode as clubs. And often with a club, you won't have students go through every single one of the activities. You'll have students do the few activities in each level, in each unit that they're most interested in. And once they've done 3 or 4 and feel confident and maybe like pass the JavaScript basics quiz, then they move on and kind of like level up. The cool thing with Vidcode is that there are so many different projects here. There's stop motion projects. They can do projects with like different emojis. They can make flags. They can do like more generative art. And so students can really drag and drop and kind of pull from what they find most interesting.
I would also add to this too, I think and we're constantly kind of creating different breakdowns of this curriculum. We'll send you guys all an awesome PDF that's more of a scope and sequence than what you can see here. But we average each of these units or levels at roughly 10 to 12 classroom hours. That can vary quite a bit depending on how much you're leveraging the off-the-computer activities.
Yeah, and also kind of the level of experience students have had before.
Yep.
So students who have done Scratch projects before will maybe take 10 hours. Students that haven't might take up to 30. It's really across the board. So here, let me go ahead and dive into the very first activity. Things, as you saw from the gallery, get much harder. The purpose of this activity is really to introduce students to the Vidcode interface. Often it's students who have only done block-based programming in the past. So this is the first time that they're in a code editor where things can break, where they can write their own code. So this first tutorial is really getting used to the Vidcode editor, getting used to writing JavaScript for the first time. Every single tutorial is really set up the same way, although you're going to have it broken up into tutorials, which are more like handholdy. That's what this is going to be. It's really going to walk me through a project. There's also challenges, so fix broken code, solve a problem, recreate a project. And then there are more open-ended creative final projects where students take everything that they've learned in a unit. They're given a worksheet beforehand, and they really plan out a creative project using what they've learned. So here, I'm going to follow the instructions and click Next to get started. And I'm going to get a prompt to select a background. This is Allie's account, so she has all these photos and videos uploaded. No, it's cute. Students can upload their own as well. It really lets them bring their interests and their media into a project. Let's go ahead, and I feel like the dinosaur is like a fan favorite.
Yeah, and the arcade game.
Yeah, people like the arcade game. When I select a project, I can also drag it in. So like if I want to do the dinosaur, I can drag it into my code. I have it appear in my text editor right away, and also here. So I'm already starting to like get those connections between my code and my code editor and what's happening on my canvas. Here, as I click through, I'm gonna have text that explains what's happening. It introduces me to new vocabulary. There are lesson plans for every single one of these tutorials as well. And those are going to give you prompts to have conversations with your students, to have them share their work that reinforces this vocabulary. So here I'm going to go ahead and click in, make sure everyone's muted. And when I do, my first effect appears. The effects are similar to Scratch, drag and droppable, except when I drag them in, they turn into real JavaScript code that I can start to play around with. So here I'm going to drag in tint. And not only did I pull in another function, this one has different arguments that I can start to play around with. So here I can start to explore the interface. I can choose a new color. I can start to mess around with the effect numbers. I can break things and get introduced to error checking for the first time. But it's kind of this safe environment where students are exposed to Vidcode, exposed to JavaScript in a way that is fun, that feels safe, and where they can really be creative and make something that not only is fun, but also looks similar to things that they're used to. It's similar to a filter like they would use on Instagram or on like another photo editing app that they might be used to or familiar with. I can also start to learn things like sequencing. So if I move like color invert after all of my code, it's going to look very different. And so I start to learn all these initial concepts while being able to like be very playful and be very creative. Once I'm done with my project, I can either save it and come back to it later if maybe like class ended and I'm not done, or I can go ahead and publish it. Dino. In the lesson plans, there are both reflection questions for students and extended reflection questions. And those can often be good to give students on the board maybe before class starts, before they start working on this. And then they can use this description section to answer those reflection questions and think more deeply about their work. So this is my project. From here, I can share it with my classmates if I wanted to, if maybe I have like a Google Classroom where I can post things. This is also the page that you as the teacher are going to see when you go to review student work. And it's also the page that really makes sense for students to have up when they're sharing their project with the class. So here, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the course. And then I would be able to continue going through the course from there. So from here, I can dive into the teacher side of things really quick. I want to really keep it under 30 minutes for you all. But I also want to open it up for questions. If you want to, if anyone doesn't see the chat, I'll type something in it really quick.
I can do the, do you want me to do the teacher PDFs?
Sure.
My favorite part. But yeah, Leandra mentioned it a few times. I'm going to like kind of leave the student coding area, which we entered through start coding here. And so if you want to go to your teacher administrator class, you can go to add students. This takes you to the teacher dashboard. Lots of stuff to see here, easy roster system, lots of easy ways to add students that you would expect. At a glance progress. We have a lesson plan, skip into that. And so let me get in the right place here. So I'm going to get in the full creative coding curriculum. You can look at different dashboards here on the left. And Leandra demoed creative filter. So I'm going to go ahead and open up that lesson plan. You can print this as a PDF. It's really chock full of so much that you can do. Discussion points, a suggested agenda. You know, it's really kind of a lot of tools for you to pick and choose from here. One thing important to note that all three, so there's about 300 PDFs like this. Each of them has a sample solution. So a lot of teachers or educators that use Vidcode kind of start there with their prep. Let's look at the sample solution. Come into class day, gives an idea of, oh, we're going to make a kind of filter that looks like a snowstorm. What do you guys want to do with that? So the sample solution is really great for what I was talking about at the beginning of the webinar, which is easy onboarding. You can also create curated galleries of your students' work. So you saw our Vidcode projects gallery, but you can also make your own. We're not going to go through all the in-depth features because, as Leandra said, we want to keep it short today. We're doing a quick crash course of everything that you can do with Vidcode.
And one thing to note about the showcase really quick is just that student usernames and any personally identifiable information won't be there. You as the teacher have it. You're able to see their projects with their usernames associated with them. But the public-facing showcase, if you do want to share it out with parents or administrators, or if you're a library and want to kind of use it as advertising for your coding club, student names aren't on there. You don't have to worry about privacy concerns.
Yeah, and that's so great. It relates to one of the questions. Thanks, Jennifer, looking to do more coding programs with children at your public library. Great place to start. Kind of leads into my CTA for this. I want to kind of share a link with you guys. So first of all, you know, if you want to get started with the club or a course at your library or school, the very first step is set up a free account. And then you can quickly add students. I just kind of want to talk through this implementation, then I'll give you guys the link. But you can send any students at your library a link so that they're all in the same cohort at your library. And we're happy to just email us after and we'll make sure that you can get that set up if it's not coming across on this demo. But let me go here. So
Jeff asked really quick thoughts on students working individually versus pairs. It's a great question. So both are awesome. I love pair programming with Vidcode. Usually when we do that, one student acts as the driver. So they're the one programming, the other is the navigator. So they are, oh, sorry. So the navigator is reading the instructions and deciding what to program, and they skip every 4 or 5 steps. The Vidcode tutorials work super well for pair programming because there's that structure of skipping every 4 to 5 steps. And often for certain students, depending on the way that they learn, it can be hard for them to sit there individually and read through a tutorial. We're releasing like short video tutorials very soon for that reason, to support different types of learning. And for those students, it can be really powerful to sit next to someone else and have to read the steps aloud and decide what they're going to program. So pair programming on Vidcode is awesome.
Oh, I love that question. That's one reason why I would like to invite you guys to join a special webinar cohort for free on Vidcode. You can always email us too. Leandra, do you mind putting our personal emails in the chat? Excuse me, just getting over a cold. So please join via this link. So this is a special link so that anyone from this call, this webinar, you as educators will be in a cohort. You can kind of learn from each other. We can support you as a group. That being said, feel free to just go to the Vidcode site, sign up for your own account. That's very great as well. Leandra's just put our emails, Leandra at vidcode.com and Ali at vidcode.com. We'd love to hear from you each individually. You know, what worked on this webinar, what didn't, something that you maybe expected to see that we didn't show you. We love all that. And we'd also love to answer more awesome questions about different implementations.
Yeah. So yeah, feel free to have the questions keep coming. We'll leave this link up. Leah just asked, would pair program typically be executed as a pair group project or as individual projects? There you go. Okay, we're unmuted. Sorry about that. So that's a great question. Pair programming would usually be done as a pair project. If you really want students to only have individual projects, but everyone's really struggling on a certain tutorial or a certain concept, it can be really good to step back and for that unit, choose the first tutorial in that level, in that unit, and kind of do it together as a class. So students are all working on their own projects, but they're watching you as the teacher kind of go through it step by step. And the first tutorial in every single unit is going to be a really good introduction and overview to the concepts that are introduced throughout that unit. And the rest of the tutorials are really like going into the nuances and having students review it. So I would say for pair programming, it's usually like a pair group project. And if you want to keep things individual, doing things together as a group can be really great. Yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Any last minute questions? All right, we'll give it a minute, but we're wrapping up the webinar. I know some people just joined, which is great. We're recording it, so we'll send everyone who's signed up today this recording. And then, yeah, just to reiterate, please join via this link to be a free educator and part of the cohort of this webinar. And then please email us, reach out in person if you have any other questions. We're going to hang on here. You have been with us since 5. We want to end on time. So thank you so much for joining. 5 p.m. EST. So yeah, thank you so much for joining, and we will be hosting these each week. So we have different office hours, different Vidcode 101, different subject area specific webinars that are great to share. Either come back yourself, share with your team. It's a really easy way to spread the word so that we can kind of share that message with you.
Yeah, and we'll send the upcoming webinars to everyone here as well in case anyone missed it or thinks your colleagues would be interested in learning more.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, thank you all so much. It doesn't seem like there's any other questions.
Cool. All right, well, we will.
Oh, we do have one.
Oh.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Jeff. Suggestions on selling Vidcode to a group of students that aren't crazy about the idea of learning coding. That's such a good question. I mean, it's hard. I think one way that works really well for us has worked really well for teachers that we work with, is to go into that gallery and show students what they will be making, what the projects that they're working on will lead to. So if they are really interested in video games, showing them the video games and being like, look, you can make your own. Or if they're more into the social media side of things, show them that they can custom filters, custom tools that they can normally use out of the box on social media. And so I think showing them projects is a good way. Do you have any others?
Yeah, well, it just reminded me of something I wanted to share. A lot of people ask us, especially to explain to students Vidcode, it's videos and it's code. What is that? It's really hard to explain. So I would just say that, and I think this is enticing for students for learning code, but on Vidcode we teach media computation, which is typically taught, it's the design and technology approach to computer programming that's offered just widespread across bachelor and grad programs. And so, if they were to go on and be in the workforce, what they're learning on Vidcode is to be a graphics programmer, to make simulations and objects and characters, all that stuff. Let's say they wanted to go study computer art one day. This is some of the core principles and already creating those projects on Vidcode. So this is a question that we're constantly,
that's a great one. And then also bringing in people who are working in the industry, having guest speakers. Every computer science education week and towards the end of the year, Allie and I visit classrooms virtually to talk about our jobs and how we use programming. So I think when they can see other people who are using programming in their day-to-day and have that connection to the real world, that can really help.
Also the end projects, I would go on the Vidcode projects page there's like 30, just pick the one that knowing your students' interests like would be the most exciting for them, and kind of show them like, oh, I mean, in some of those, like, I know there's a lot of cool stuff you can build today, but that's one way to approach it as well.
Yeah. And in the lesson plan, like in the first one, we have kind of prompts to like talk about JavaScript and programming with them. And we chose JavaScript partially because it's a really easy language to take off of Vidcode and use on like any website, makes things that students can share on their own outside of Vidcode. So maybe just like showing them those connections. Sometimes when I'm like introducing JavaScript, I'll like open up, let's see, I'll just like open up, yeah, there we go. The terminal. Hey, look, this is what every website is. We have like all of our HTML here, we have all of our CSS here, and there's also like JavaScript, making the animations happen, doing things like opening this, doing things like opening this chat box. So just trying to connect JavaScript and what they're learning to the websites they're using every day.
And another last piece about that, you know, is, and also supporting is foundational, but yeah, again, they're learning how to make things move on the internet, and you know, soul skill for any job or something they will want to do next. So we could talk forever about that, obviously. Long-winded answer, but great question.
So it doesn't seem like there are any others. So we will close this out for now. But thank you all so much for attending.
Yeah, thank you. And we're hoping to, we have a lot of webinars like this and we get all these great questions. We're hoping to, we actually have a community forum as well. It's very new, but we're hoping to open up more spaces because everyone's learning from each other right now. So really appreciate your guys' thoughts and stuff today and participation. Cool.
All right, bye everyone.
Bye everyone. Have a good afternoon.